We are back for another interview with a preacher on the previous Sunday's message, and it was from Deuteronomy in the sermon series of the Ten Commandments, and we're on commandment number 4. Thought we'd read it and then begin to ask Armel questions about it after he gives us a summary. So it's Deuteronomy chapter 5 verse 12. It says, "Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labour and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day." So, Armel, could you just remind us, what was the focus of your message on Sunday, just to get that in our heads first?
Yes, I think it was about that verse. I think about that command to observe the Sabbath, and really focusing about what is behind, what does it mean. And I think we've seen that the Sabbath is all about stopping everything, about ceasing everything. So I think the word Sabbath, which is Shabbat in Hebrew, comes from the word Shavat, which actually means stop and ceasing. So I think it's a bit of the stopping day, as we were seeing. And I think what we saw is about stopping everything, but not just for the sake of stopping and doing nothing. Actually, it's to stop everything, but in order to make time for what matters the most. And we saw 3 things that from the passage that we are to make time for on that day. And then so we are meant to make time to focus on God, and that is to worship Him, to celebrate His work, to express trust in Him as the provider, and then also to make time to rest from work. And we saw that actually resting from work makes a big statement. It says that work is not God, that God is more important than work. People matter, creation matters. Our primary identity is in being the people of God, is in being in Christ, and not in our work. And then also the other thing to make time for is in reflecting God's character, or being reflection of God's character. So the same way that God provided a relief to the Israelites by rescuing them out of Egypt, actually what we are to reflect that sort of things with the rest, by providing rest and by showing the same compassion and love that our God showed. So in short, that's what we were thinking about.
Yeah, so in short, we should cease, we should rest, we should reflect God's character. So how you said in giving the general points which we are to apply.
Yeah.
And you also pointed out difficulties that we can get into.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could just help us to see what the moral dilemmas we can get into about the use of the Sabbath, the extremes. Where can we get ourselves caught up and miss out on this message?
I think that's quite a very important thing, because I think I think all the other commandments, since there is something really kind of, whether it's a relational with us and God. So so you should not have any other gods. You should not have idols, and you should be careful about how you pronounce the name of God. And then the other ones after that is honor your parents, don't murder. It's a lot of kinds of relational between people. But the Sabbath one, it seems is it's a unique one of it because it's about a day. So it changes the thing, and then another tension in it is it's also about the seventh day of the week, and also the big problems that you also have among Christians is to how do we approach the Sabbath? Like how do we take this command? So should Christians still celebrate the Sabbath? And these are big things. These are big questions to think. But now we thought about what is the Sabbath. It's the seventh day of the week. No, originally the seventh day of the week actually falls on Saturday, not on Sunday. And so that starts a bit of something. And then, but Christians have been doing Sunday. I've been gathering on Sunday because that's where the resurrection of Jesus was, on the first day of the week. Or in other parts of the New Testament, it will be called the Lord's Day. And Christians, this has been the day that Christians have been gathering. But I think there has been this understanding that that Sundays totally replace the Sabbath. And so that's one extreme. And then the other extreme is so you have Christianity and the Sabbath. There is no connection. But the big thing to think of is, I think we see in Colossians that Christ is the reality of all these things. So of the things like the Sabbath, all these festivals. So Christ is the reality of this. So all Christ fulfilled these things. And this shows that actually Christ should change the way we look at the Sabbath. So if we have, and that sort of changed a bit how we approach this situation. And I think so now you have these two extremes. So you have those on one side who would think, Sunday, Sabbath, same thing. Whatever applies to the Sabbath happens on Sunday. So on Sunday, everything should stop. Nobody should work. Children should not do homework, and nobody should go to the shop. Nothing should be running. And then also you have the wrong extreme, another extreme, which would be Christianity, Sabbath, no connections. And I think that changed how you view things. But the helpful thing to think about, that's what we thought about in the sermon, is to see, if Christ is the reality of all things, what does it mean? Well, being under Christ, it means that actually we are not saved by our observation of the Sabbath. So trying to impose things that we don't have to impose don't really make sense. But on the other hand, on the other extreme, also, even though we are not saved by our observation of the Sabbath, we are under Christ. And this means that we are not totally unconnected. So what we do matter because we are part of the body. So we still have a duty to gather, to praise God together, and so on. And that's where Sunday sort of makes sense. I don't know, I've kind of threw a lot of ideas at once.
Yeah, so are you saying that the Sabbath that the Israelites would have been under, and they should have followed, has a different focus? It's a different way, or a different way to think through it now that Christ has come.
Yes, so I think and we should read the Old Testament the same way that the apostles would have read it. Yeah. It's clear that when the apostles quote scripture, Christ changes everything, and if Christ fulfills so many things, and the Sabbath has to be one of these things. So how does Christ fulfill the Sabbath? And I think one way another way to think about the Sabbath, that was one thing I didn't say about how the Sabbath as a sign of the covenant. So you have it can be also a sign as the Mosaic covenant. You've got circumcision, the sign of the Abrahamic covenant, and then the Sabbath being the sign of the Mosaic covenant. So that's that is one as well. So that's quite unique to Israel. And that's why I think Jewish people today still meet on Saturday. They still have the Sabbath, and so on. And even some Christians who are from a Jewish heritage, they still have this Sabbath thing. But as crucial. But yeah, so I think it will be. I think where to go is to have some. Yeah, it's good to have a bit some nuance, a bit more of a balance about not to view that. The Sabbath and Sunday is the same thing. I think the duty that Israel had with the Sabbath, keeping the Sabbath, is we have a different duty. And I think that's just the way to say it. And I think what we saw in the sermon is, yes, we have a different duty. That's not what we are. Like, the observance of the Sabbath is not what we are called to. But we are called to make the same statement. And all the things that all the statements that the Sabbath made, which is by focusing on God, which is, we are here to worship God, to celebrate His work of creation. Also that work is not God. God is more important than work. All these things, while we are still to make these statements. And if we ask, and the question is, how are we going to make the statements? And this is how we should look at what we do on Sundays and what we do with the rest of our weeks as well. Because, and that's an important thing as well, if under the obligation of the law, there was 1 day a week that was given, well, actually, us without the obligation, how much are we going to dedicate to God? Should it be 1 day a week, or how many hours out of a week? And these are the things. But the difference is, we are not under the obligation of the observance, but we are still trying to make the same statement, the same declaration that the Sabbath is making. Yes.
I've got a couple more questions.
Yes.
One is, you talked about resting from work being a good antidote to the idolatry of work.
Yeah.
What about people who aren't working? Maybe they're unemployed, maybe they're not able to work for whatever reason. How does that part of the Sabbath apply to them?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a different, and I think in these are different categories. I think there is being unemployed and not being able to work is two different things. And being unemployed, while at least even in this country, I think that your job is to look for a job when you are unemployed. And I know what it feels like to be unemployed as well. But so I guess the rest will be, maybe 1 day a week you stop looking for a job. I guess that would be a bit of the rest, like kind of moving away from your daily routine. One thing that people who are not able to work, I guess there will be some routines, some duties that you have, and that maybe have a rest from these things. And I think that is something that we can relate, especially if you have a kind of a ministry job where actually your work involves serving God in a way, like God is involved in our work. And like, so even in ministry, like, what do you do? Well, on Sunday you still work, because you have to go and make a sermon and all these things. But yet but on your day, so what do you do? So even if you have a ministry call, you can think, this is me serving God, or is this me doing something for my job, or is this me serving God? It's like all these things actually. It's a very thin line, and then you have to figure out. The one piece of wisdom that I've kind of read about, I think one thing that a minister did was said on this day of rest, actually he prays differently. So I think he has less petition but more praises, and so that would be his way to kind of sort of enjoy God, and like that's a different day, and it's spending more time listening to praise and stuff. And I think that could be one thing that people who probably don't have the job actually say, okay, maybe a day a week or some hours in a week, I will do things slightly differently, and I will focus on things that will just enable me just to have more of my mind on God. But in a slightly different way than the other days.
Thank you for that. And final question, just can you give us some helpful ways for us to think about how we can grow in our observance of the Sabbath? Just some practical tips on how we can. We've heard the sermon. and you talked about
Yeah.
focusing on God, resting from work, reflecting God's character. But I just imagine,
Yeah.
like you know us all, really.
Yeah. So
How do we just make sure we don't forget, change how?
well, I think that like and I'm going to sound quite repetitive on this. I think the big thing is we have to always remember grace. That's sort of the main thing here. It's not and remember that our big thing is our call is to make a statement, is to really point to Christ by the way we live as well, and by the things we say, the things we do. And I think so this can be reflected in the way we rest as well. And for person to person it will be different. So what is your work situation? If you happen to work on the Sundays, if you whatever it is, that will change from person to person. So many things can be done. Out of something I lost my train of thought. I have to remember what I was going with it.
Well, one thing I appreciate you saying, really appreciate, is actually one, it's a grace, so we don't want to go just okay, let's give ourselves more work to do.
Yeah.
But apply how we can focus on God, rest from work, and reflect God's character in the different lives that we lead and different circumstances. I suppose we can help in family. We can help each other.
Yeah.
Spouses can talk to each other. Friends can talk to each other, and we can help talk about it. And pray for one another.
Yeah.
Pray for the church. This can be an ongoing prayer request that we have for our brothers and sisters in church.
Yeah, and I think again these are good things. And one thing actually I remember, I think in the sermon I said it. You have a few questions to ask yourself about. Really ask yourself about your motives, because I think this is the hardest command, not to break. In a sense, because work, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to work. We are commanded to work, and the question here we have to rest from work. And I think it's recognizing that we're not making an idol out of work, and that's the big comment. And I think it's ask ourselves some questions. Why do I find it so hard to say no? Who am I trying to please? Like all these things, who am I serving? I think these are helpful things to do. And myself, like in ministry, these are things that I find myself that I find helpful questions. Is like, okay, why do I really want to say yes? Like, is it because I want to serve God? And that will be, really like for the glory of God doing this, or because I want to have, I want to add this to my CV. I want to have a better, my performance, or maybe I want to be accepted by people, and all these things. And these are things to always, it's really good practical things to do. And as I said, that's a really, and the line is a very thin line, because working is good, but working is good, but working is not good. And that's.
So you're saying that's how we observe the Sabbath in principle is going to keep revealing to us how we are walking with the Lord.
Yeah.
Is that fair comments?
Yeah.
So how we observe from week to week.
Yeah.
We're going to see how much we are really resting from work, how much we are really focusing on God.
No, I think what I just said is just provide a bit of just asking ourselves some questions where it's more about identifying our motives.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing that because it's good to work. So and the human heart is deceitful, so we can deceive ourselves saying like, oh yeah, I work for the glory of God. I work because God commanded me to work. No, actually, you're doing that extra stuff because work is your idol. And that is and I think that's what I'm saying. Ask yourself these questions each time, especially when people ask you to do extra stuff, and you're like, okay, should I really say yes to this or not? And then there are dangers on both sides where you don't want to become too lazy and that type of thing. But here, I think the Sabbath, the danger is for those who overwork. is not is less for those who have all the struggle of working less.
Thank you, Armel, and look forward to hearing from you the next time we'll hear when you preach on the 5th commandment.
Thank you.
Thank you.